As I browse my Steam library, it starts to dawn on me that games are being released so often and so rapidly that as time goes on, way too many games are gonna be overlooked or disappear into obscurity. My own backlog, for instance, is so big, I don't think I will ever have enough time to play everything, let alone make a video review of it all. This is why, as I scrolled through my library, that I thought, why not talk about 3 indie games I have played recently? There is a lot of great games here that are awesome, but also are small enough that I don't think I'll be able to cover it all in a 7 to 10 minute review. So instead, I can compile them into a neat little video, giving each game a fair showcase. Think of it as a good way to bring attention to potential hidden gems, or to remember great games that get buried in the years that were loaded with awesome games. Now, the rules for these videos are going to be simple. They have to be relatively lightweight games. Basically, games that do not take too long to download. We're talking about games that go between the 100 megabytes up until, say, 5 gigabytes max. I'm not gonna be taking a look at games that are too big. After all, the whole idea for this is to take a look at games that you can download very easily and begin playing right away, and not the kind of behemoths the AAA industry is starting to give us lately. I'm looking at you, Modern Warfare. On that note, they have to be indie enough that any machine can run them, but great enough that they do deserve the mention. More importantly, they have to be games I have beaten. If I'm going out of my way to complete these games, it's because they're just that good. So without further ado, let's begin this video series with a little headbanger. Slain is probably one of the biggest comeback stories in the recent years, not named No Man's Sky. The original release was riddled with bugs, terrible controls, and thanks to its difficulty, it was just unbearable to play. But the developers were not discouraged by this. One trip back to the drawing board some patches later, and Slain is one of the most fun hard games I have the pleasure to play. If I am to compare Slain to a specific game, it's gonna have to be Castlevania. Everything is there. Close range combat, magic, a gloriously bloody and demonic medieval dark fantasy setting, and a badass difficulty curve worthy of the NES and the SNES era. And it has the beauty of having one of the most metal soundtracks I had the pleasure to headbang to. The gameplay in the game is very simplistic, but it is also very challenging. You get all your basic mechanics from your average Castlevania-like game, but with one little caveat. There is no healing items, and outside of elemental damage for your sword, you get no upgrades. Your only healing are the little beacons you get when you reach from point A to point B, and you have to do it taking as little damage as possible, because all the enemies, even the minor grunts, can hit you like a freaking truck. The skill ceiling here is learning to kill your enemies and overcome the various death traps in the levels while taking as little damage as possible. And that is where the depth of the gameplay really shines in all its gory glory. Make no mistake, you will die in this game a lot. Any mistake is going to cost you dearly, and every death is going to take you back to the latest checkpoint. So you can find yourself repeating segments over and over again, especially when you have obstacles that can and will one-shot you. But that's really part of the charm. Learning from your mistakes, you can't brute force your way through the game, and repeating the same failing strategy over and over again is not advised. But once you manage to overcome these, it feels so freaking good. Parrying an enemy that can one-shot you and then riposting them carries such a punch. It just reminds you of how much ass this metalhead Undead Knight can kick. Then we get to the best part of the game, the bosses. These bosses are not merciful at all, and some of them even had me stuck with them for the longest time. But again, learning how to deal with them is fantastic for when you finally beat them, and this only gets complemented further by the headbang button. Every time you defeat a boss, you get a chance to headbang in honor of the Horned God, and headbanging after overcoming a difficult fight is, well, it's just delicious. But if the blood and gore of a Castlevania-like is not your jam, then maybe Distance will make you a fan. Distance is a game all about two things: car parkour and awesome techno music. The gameplay here is slightly similar to the surf level of CSGO and say a bit of the parkour levels of Black Ops 3. In this game, you drive your car around what seems to be a ruined futuristic world. You have to make it from point A to point B, but as I mentioned, it is done with car parkour. In this game, you can go from speeding around dangerous obstacles to straight up flying or driving on top of the walls or even the ceiling. Gravity and momentum make the core of this experience. You have to maintain speed if you want to stick to a wall or a ceiling, and you have to twist your car at the right time in order to get to the really tough jumps. An easy game this is not. It has difficulty spikes where you can get stuck for a while trying to overcome an obstacle, but just like with any challenging game, the moment you figure it out, it feels really good. The story in this game is not really much to drive home about. You're escaping what appears to be a Tron-like futuristic world, and you are doing it on a timer. The game tries to make trip interpretations about forgetting the Earth and a rogue AI, but ultimately it's all just flavor. A little excuse to have you driving around this dying world as you try to beat the timer, because indeed, the main story has you racing against the clock, having to escape everything before it is all lost. But that doesn't take merit away from the story or the game itself. If anything, it makes it all the more atmospheric, like you are actually there, and you can actually take that extra step as the game even has VR support. Now, to complement it all, the music in this game has a slightly dynamic touch to it. Every time you die, the soundtrack changes to reflect it, but it is done in a way that it feels like it's actually part of the song and not just an interruption. So both the rhythm of the music and your own momentum as you raise the track is never really lost. As mentioned earlier, the game does have some crazy difficulty spikes, but it is the kind of difficulty spikes that I can live with, as everything has a solution. But if the story mode is not your thing, you can always mess around with the arcade mode, and see if you can hone your skills to get the best times, because this game in fact encourages speedrunning. So, if techno music and Tron-like environments are your thing, Distance may just be the game made for you. I know it may be weird to end the video on a point-and-click game, but Gumbo had that little charm that reminded me why I love the genre. Gumbo takes you on a journey with a little sack person to find a red gem, so he can rescue his dog that has been kidnapped by an alien. And that's just it. Much like other games like Machinarium or Botanicula, Gumbo has virtually no dialogue. It's all about solving the puzzle of a room before you can move forward. It's a super short game, you can actually finish it in a bit more than an hour if you know what you're doing, and much like any other point-and-click game, you are better off hovering your mouse all over the screen to find the next interactable that will move you forward. It can be tricky at times because of the art style, but in the end I found most of the puzzles to be rather intuitive, and the ones who were not, well, they got to receive the good old guide treatment. I'm including this game because it manages to do a lot of fun with the little things in the little time that it lasts. The style and comedy of this game is really not that different from a Saturday morning cartoon, and I just love that. More often than not, you want to know where a puzzle will take you next, or what kind of shenanigans is Gumbo gonna get into, all for the sake of saving his doggy. I am also including it because while having a high-octane action or a lot of skill-based gameplay is fantastic, I am also the kind of gamer that likes to just sit back, relax, and enjoy a more chill game. Yeah, point-and-clicks often have the problem of have you brute-forcing your way through them, but that's kind of what I like of them, because after you try for so long to click everywhere to try and find a solution, you can just stop, take a breather, clear your head, and begin looking around your screen more carefully to figure out the next part of the puzzle. And it's simple things like that that will forever be why enjoying a variety of games is good for you. Because sometimes, who knows, you can get lucky and find 3 little indie gems.